Welcome to Leaders on the Edge, where bi-weekly I sit with extraordinary individuals from around the world who are top thinkers and doers. They are committed to developing and mastering not only their craft, also their mind and their emotional resilience, so they can act boldly in situations where others often hang back and play it safe. And together, we're revolutionizing the role of leaders. I'm very excited to introduce my guest today, Chris Loeffler. Now, Chris is the CEO and co-founder of Caliber. He serves as chairman of the company's board of directors. And in his role as CEO, he directs and executes global strategy, oversees investments and fund management, as well as contributes to private and public capital formation. In his role as co-founder, Chris took on an early role of forming the company's financial and operational infrastructure, along with navigating the vertical integration of all real estate and investment services. Prior to forming Caliber, Chris served as a senior associate in auto and assurance practices. He completed public company audits, developed control systems, and completed several acquisitions or sales transactions with clients that included Honeywell International, Verizon Communications, Arizona Diamondbacks, and many, many more. Chris has earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration with a concentration in accounting from California Polytechnic State University, but he also attended the University of Madrid in Madrid, Spain. So, Chris, welcome. And thank you for being a guest today. I very much appreciate it.
It's good to be here. Good to see you.
Thank you. So, because we're looking at leadership and what does leadership mean in today's world at pre-COVID and post-COVID, what do you see as some of the differences that have occurred in Caliber and or people that you work in and around? What was it like pre-COVID, and what do you, more importantly, what do you see as the changes getting through COVID? And then we're not really post-COVID, but we've got our fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think it feels like we're on our way out, but there's always flare-ups in these types of things. When I think of leadership prior to the pandemic and then in the kind of post-pandemic era, the first thing that comes to mind is really the desire for strong leadership, I think, has increased. Anytime there's a lot of disruption in the world, which the pandemic has clearly caused, some businesses are exceeding numbers than they ever dreamed of. Some are out of business. Some people individually in their lives really enjoyed more time at home with their families. Others found that this was the darkest last 2 years they've ever had. And so in that time when things are so shaken up, I think what we all look for, myself included, is strong leadership. And what strong leadership means to me is simply taking action without really any, you do your best to figure out what the best next step is. But aside from that, there's no assurances, especially in this era. So as an example, the whole question of working in the office versus remote and how to reshuffle your company and will people be successful in these different formats. What we did was we came together as a leadership team. We thought out and talked out and debated all the different ways to take action. And then we just made a policy and moved forward. And I think the worst thing to do in a time of disruption right now is sitting and waiting and watching what everybody else is doing and seeing if you can read the tea leaves and decide what direction things are going to go. I'll give you one more example before we move on. But
please.
I was in a discussion with a Fortune 500 firm leader, which won't be named. But that person was talking to me about trends and where they were going. And, they have a peer group of different companies that are all relatively doing the same thing. And I asked them, what do you think about travel? Are you going to take your people and let them travel again for business? And his response was, no, we're holding back. We're waiting to see what our peers do and what direction they're going to go. And my follow-up question was, well, are you going out to restaurants? Are oh yeah, we're going on vacation next week. We're going traveling. We're going to restaurant. Oh, so your people are actually living their lives again, and that's what they want to do. But you're still leaving this corporate restriction on. What if you considered being the leader in your peer group and dropping the restriction immediately? Wouldn't that then signal to the rest of your peer group, oh my gosh, we got to catch these guys. We can't let them go out and start selling and going on the road again. We need to do the same thing. And then the whole thing kind of just is over. And he sort of chuckled and said, yeah, I wish that's what would happen, but that's not what's going to happen. We're going to sit around and wait. And I don't think that's leadership. I think that's the antithesis of leadership. And so that's the short answer.
Yes, no, and I love it. To me, a leader is not somebody who everybody looks to, and the leader sitting there twiddling their thumbs or cowering in a corner in a fetal position, and looking and wondering, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? The sky is falling, and we don't really have a model for what we just went through. So how can anybody say what's right or wrong? You have to do what's right for your company and your people. So I'm curious, one of the things that we know as leaders is that we as human beings, whether it's the leader themselves is going through it, and I think we all did, as well as your leadership team and everyone else, the teams in the company, the workforce, we really went to a place on Maslow's hierarchy of needs where we were right down at the bottom of the pyramid.
Yeah.
We were wondering about toilet paper. We were wondering about finances, even homes for some people. I mean, it was really took us down to our knees in many cases, if not all cases, though some of us hide it better than others.
Yeah.
What did you yourself and or with your leadership team, what actions did you take or behaviors did you take on to first, put the mask on yourself and then to help those around you get through that period of time?
We, as soon as it became apparent that this was something that was going to be as big as it was, which was pretty quickly in our world, we went into what we call crisis management mode, and we put in a crisis management platform. And what that basically means is two things. It's a lot more complicated than I'm going to make it out to be. But one is we encourage and communicate in kind of a new manner where we say, I'm afraid, I'm worried, I'm fearful, I think that we're going to lose all of our clients, we're going to lose all of our money, our investors are going to think that the world's coming to an end and they're going to all ask for redemptions at the same time, things that actually are real in our world. And we say those things out loud. We talk about them in the leadership team. We say, okay, so that happened. Now what? What's the next move? What's the next step? And through gaming out that system and knowing what is the worst case scenario and that we've talked through it, it allows us to move past that fear very quickly. And then modeling that behavior with our people so they can do it as well. It's not just gaming it out. It's also acknowledging how you're feeling and saying it out loud, I think is really important, because otherwise it just gets kind of bottled up and then you start snapping at people or you start acting stressed and nobody understands what's going on. I think that was really important. Then the other side of the crisis management platform is taking the communication that we would typically do once a month or once a quarter or periodically and making it every week or every day or as frequent as possible. Because when people are going through something traumatic or you're going through something traumatic, you need to talk more often. Time kind of slows down and you've got to every single moment, need to be staying connected in the best possible way you can, especially in such a crazy crisis that caused us to be disconnected physically. So,
right.
That was our playbook. Those are the two things that we did. I think we executed on it as well as we could in considering the circumstances. And I would use the same playbook in the future and just, continue to get better at executing on it.
Yes, I love it, especially the saying it out loud and to acknowledge the fact that you're human and that we were all, I don't care who you are, how big, strong, famous, how much money you make, whatever, didn't matter. Like I say, we went down to that our needs were just safety and security. So to be able to say that out loud and to hear others who within the team that you admire, that you recognize their skills, their talents, their capabilities, and to hear them saying similar type of words, maybe differently, but similar words, are like, okay, we really are all in this together.
Yeah. And you said something interesting there. No matter how much money you had, we were all looking for safety and security. And I think that was definitely the first layer there. And then depending on your life circumstances, you were also looking for companionship. I mean, you could
Yes.
be a really successful, wealthy person, and maybe your kids had moved out of the house, or maybe your spouse had passed or something like that. And maybe your way of being with people was going out to restaurants and going out in social circles and such. And that person, no matter how much they had, was not able to find that life companionship that they might be lacking. And loneliness is a terrible, terrible thing for our souls. And so I think that some of us found that we had strong companionship. I went home to played with my 2-year-old and worked from home. And I was like, this is great. I get to hang out with my 2-year-old. But that was my life circumstance. Other, members of our team had young kids that were supposed to have been in school, and they were trying to find a way to perform at their job, which was impossible at the same level with their kids coming in and out every day. So it was just it has evolved quite a bit over the last 18 to 20 months.
Well, and I love that you recognize that, not all circumstances are the same, and that, even though we're all human and we all have the human condition to deal with at one end and to use for our best strengths and moving forward on the other side of things. And one of the things that we most need, as you mentioned, is connection, but connection in what way and with who and how often, and all that can be very different for each and every one of us. So to ask those questions and find out, how do we partner with you? Or I had many different companies that I was working with where those who were maybe a couple rungs down on the org chart, they'd say, well, I don't see people in the hallway that I'd normally run into. I don't get to sit in the same meetings with them, but I used to be able to see them in the hallway or in the lunchroom or something and ask questions or laugh with them or whatever. I'm not even getting noticed now, except by the person who I'm directly reporting to. Was there anything there that you noticed or did differently to help in those situations?
Yeah, we noticed in our organization through just discussions, but also through surveys, anonymous surveys, that about a third of our team loved remote. About a third of our team hated remote. And about a third of our team didn't really care. And so it kind of just sat in this middle piece where the third that hated remote came back to the office early, along with the leadership, because at leadership, we decided that we wanted to be sort of an office first environment where, to the extent we could be back in the office, we would, and then we would accommodate everyone's individual needs for them to be remote. And then the third that didn't seem to care either way started to come back very quickly as well, because they said, oh, there's people in the office, I'll come back too. And so about 2/3 of our team came back fairly quickly. And then the remaining third, some of them may be permanent remote and they love it. And that's good for their life. And as long as it works for the organization, we're supportive of it as well. So it's been that's been our experience. And I think it's also kind of, this pandemic has fractured out people into different groups and subgroups and little groups, based on their belief systems or their circumstances or a bunch of other things. And, no different than working in the office.
Right. Or even financially, where companies are saying, well, okay, so I don't have to have my people travel to different places to meet with others, or go to meetings or go whatever. We can save those costs and that time and still get it done, because, oh my God, there's this thing called Zoom that we can use, which others were not necessarily aware of. But I've been using it for years working international, but most were not.
Or we'll only go live on the things that really matter. So then those things become even more impactful, which actually drives people to want to do them, more often, to the extent that they're impactful, right?
Yes. Learning how to connect and learning how to teach and train or partner with people across the internet and realize that we can still be powerful and emotionally connected in this particular way. So moving from that conversation a little bit, let's move over to the world of these young folks that are coming into
I
the
used to be
workforce.
one of
And
them.
I know I used to too, about 40 years ago. Um, but coming into the world where we have people who are young people who are very intelligent and capable and knowledgeable, um, often, not always, but sometimes want to move out of where they are in the college world and walk right into a leadership role, and yet they haven't had that particular experience of what is it like to lead day to day, where it doesn't come to you in a book.
Yeah.
I'm curious just what you found as challenges and what you have found as um, exciting new possibilities by being surrounded with some of the new leaders in your world.
I'm lucky enough that I still somewhat remember what it's like to be coming out of college and taking my first job and how important, that moment is in
See,
your
I
life.
never went to college, so I have no idea what that was like.
It's
I'm like
kind
the
of,
first draft that I come right out of high school and go right onto the team. I
there
play
you
in the
go. You're right
pros.
on. That's right. You can dribble, you're good. Um, so I kind of remember that enough. It's hazy. Mostly I remember being impressed by like company happy hours and stuff like that. But, you know, um, I think what we have done successfully is we are abundantly explicit with newer people coming into the organization on what their job is and what it isn't, and how our desire to grow them and where they stand. Everybody likes to know where they stand. If they don't know where they
Right.
stand, they feel destabilized, they feel uncomfortable, they feel sometimes judged, things like that. And so we've been very, to our newer recruits, like, you're an analyst, you've never done this before, you're going to work harder than everybody else, longer than everybody else, and get paid less than everybody else so you can learn this. But as your skill set grows, here's your career path, here's where we're going to take you. And that's worked pretty good for us. We don't hire a high volume of new, fresh out of college graduates, so maybe we don't get quite as exposed to other types of attitudes. But the people that find that attractive have come to work for the company and have done really well. And the ones that don't sort of self-select. And I wish them the best. I mean, I've got
Right.
friends who, think that if they can automate their entire job and so they don't actually have to be at work anymore, they've succeeded. And I'm like, yeah, you've succeeded at figuring one thing out, but that means you need to go work hard on something else.
That's like, what's your definition of success?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know?
Exactly. But I don't think every generation looks at the new generation coming up with bewilderment. But there are definitely some interesting trends happening in the younger generation. One I actually think is really fascinating. I was talking about at breakfast today is a return to religion. One of the youngest generation is self-identifies as going to church or believing in God. The second most as compared to the boomer generation. It's fascinating. It's like,
Yeah.
maybe the tech and the social media and all the stuff we've been trying to digest for the last 10, 20, 15 years hasn't provided much meaning. And maybe the younger generation is seeking that. So I think that if you look at those sub trends and try to think about what that means for the people coming in from that group, maybe, helping them find meaning in their work would be helpful, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know after 9/11, one of the things, I was in the world of construction, had been for, well, I had that time hadn't been for 25 years yet, but I owned a construction company. And one of the things that we found was right after 9/11 happened, we had more people calling us to either build a church or do a TI work on a church or somehow expand a church, because people were returning to church. Now that changed again.
Yeah.
And yet it's like anything else. So what's your definition of God? Well, that's up to everybody. What label you slap on it is up to you. But I mean, again, I think it does go back to what is the meaning of life? And with going back to COVID and the pandemic, one of the things it's done for us is step back and say, what does really matter?
Yeah.
Which is different for everybody again. And as long as we can ask the right questions to understand the perception of how somebody else is coming at any topic, whether it be religion or whatever else, it starts to broaden our world as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
are there particular behaviors, and I'll throw my viewpoint in here real quick, that,
Sure.
when I look at, my whole thing is about revolutionizing the role of leadership, where it's not the top-down hierarchical, do as I say, look at my business card. You see the, the title I have on my business card. I must know everything. I must be really important. To a coaching style of leadership where leaders really don't have to know everything. All they need to know is the right questions to ask and how to ask them. But that also drives to new and different behaviors. So my question goes to, are there certain behaviors that you would consider within Caliber, or just even within your life and companies you've been in, certain behaviors that you believe drive a competitive edge and success in a company?
I think it depends.
I didn't say this was going to be easy. I just
Yeah.
said we were going to talk.
I think it depends on the stage of the company, the
Mm,
size of the team member composition, and what you're trying to accomplish. And so I'll try to give examples of what I mean. As an example, if you're working with a contractor, great example, you could have a contractor that has all the skills necessary to complete the job. But in that field in particular, you often deal with contractors that they're limiting their own potential because of their mindset. They get to a certain mindset, I can do 3 projects at a time, and that's it. And that means that's what they're going to make for the rest of their life. They're never going to grow because they've decided that project number 4 is going to put them over the edge. And that's so for a period of time in that contractor's life, their limit to their abilities and the behaviors they needed to focus on was their actual skills. Like, do I know how to hire the right people? Do I know how to do contracts? Do I know how to swing the hammer? Do I know how to do all those parts and pieces? So if you don't have the skills to work on your mindset, in my opinion, is somewhat a waste of time, because your mindset is something that requires so many more layers, that you've got to make sure that you're building that mindset off of a skill set that actually is applicable to what you're trying to do. Trying to be an accountant, you got to become a technically good accountant before you become a great accountant. But then after that, the skill set becomes completely irrelevant very quickly. Once you become competent at those skill sets, the next step is, how do I get to the point where when I see a problem, I'm the type of person that sees 3 solutions and the path to those solutions and doesn't even think about the fact that the problem could slow me down, versus when I see a problem, I see all the reasons why the problem occurred. I see what I did to cause the problem. I blame myself and others. I spend all my time focused on the problem, and I don't get enough time to actually do anything about it. Like, different people have different ways of looking at the world. And so those behavior, when you're talking about behaviors, I kind of equate that to, how does that person take action, which often comes straight from their mindset and their attitude of what they believe. So am I the type of person who wakes up every day and says, I am going to be successful today, and no matter what happens, I will figure it out? And if I am, and when I'm faced with those things that cause me to crash, I have the behaviors around reminding myself that it's going to be okay, taking the next step, finding the solutions. All those things matter the most. So at least within my own organization, I look for different things at different times. In the early stages, typically skill set. In the later stages, more attitude and mindset, because I think that the attitude and mindset can be grown as you grow those earlier skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you well know, my clientele are high achievers, whether they be in sports, NFL, pro golfers, men's golf teams, whatever, or in corporate C-suite. And they always are, exactly like you say. They have the the talent, the knowledge, the skills, the capability, the expertise. That's why they did get hired in most cases. But where the problem comes in is exactly what you describe, is contextual. How do they think about themselves, especially when they're all alone with their thoughts, but also when they are in problem resolution or faced with a pandemic or whatever type of problem, just a schedule being blown. And, you know, where do they feel it? What do they feel about it? What language did they put to it? What steps did they take? What questions do they ask themselves and others? How do they pull their team together in a way that it worked really well in construction? I'd just walk down the hall and go, I need you, 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 you. And they would know, okay, conference room now.
Yeah.
And they just gather up their stuff and come in and say, here's the problem, start shooting me some ideas. And each one having their own perspective and their own expertise, you can work through it when you have that working. It's same with working with, you know, with NFL or high performance teams, which is what in corporate, it's always best to have a team rather than a group of highly intelligent people.
Well, and I think that in that sense, in a team setting, I do think it is, again, a little bit stage dependent on the company. There might be a point in time, if something's early stage enough, that having a very dynamic, highly capable leader that can just kind of lift the whole thing on their shoulders for a period of time makes the most sense, because you may not have the resources to recruit that killer team. You might have to go from small business to mid-size before you can actually attract those other leaders to get there. Maybe they co-found the company with you or something, but a lot of times it's really going to be, you have to be this know-it-all person that is capable of bringing from small business to medium business. But then at that point in time, you're supposed to now transform yourself into this lead, you know, coaching, you know, team leading type of leader. And a lot of people struggle to make that.
Yes.
That
Yeah, they
transition.
go from almost a consulting mode of, I'll tell you what to do, when to do it, how to do it, go do it. We'll learn together. Let's step back. We'll assess it. We'll observe it. We'll adjust, and we'll go forward again. And then, like you say, as they get bigger and higher, maybe either different or more people, or have the ones that they had on their team grow up with them. You're absolutely right. Then there's a different form of leadership that's needed at that point. So when and I know that you do some, I think, fishing, and I've seen some, you know, in fast cars, you know, I equate when I drove a 600 horsepower race car, average 124 miles an hour. And I'm like, yes, I have control, almost maybe, but not quite, you know, a little tweak and I'm off the road. I'm curious how you equate any of your sports and your competitiveness to leadership, how you equate it and how you've used it to your benefit, and or if it's not benefited you at times to be competitive.
Yeah, you know, for me personally, I don't like to lose when I certainly think that I can win, you know, when I see a path to win. But I'm also, you know, kind of an advocate of Sun Tzu, where if the battle is lost, you know, take the loss, you know.
Wipe the hands, walk away.
You know, I personally find the most motivation out of the creative aspects of business. So the thing that gets me excited about a particular opportunity or problem or whatever it is that I'm facing is the fact that I can, kind of similar to what you said, grab this person, this relationship over here that I've been working on, and maybe this concept, and put all these things together and create something out of nothing. You know, and that creative aspect of business is super fun, and definitely a little bit addictive for me. You know, in my personal life, I try to do some of that, but it's a little bit disruptive to your personal life, because, you know, not everybody in your life wants to do something different every time in a different way, you know, constantly. And so it creates a little bit of disruption at home. But my wife deals with it.
Or you try to win against your wife all the time and never let her never let her think that she has her.
She deals with me, and she puts up with me, and she does a great job with it. But, you know, she rules the roost ultimately. So I fall in line when I go home. But it is my favorite thing to do, to create something out of nothing. So that's the thing that gets me the most excited. And the outcomes of money and growth and everything that comes from that is, in my opinion, just kind of a byproduct of it all.
Right.
And I try not to chase the outcomes. I try to chase the creation.
Yes, love that. Whenever I'm working with like NFL players, and I'll tell them, what do you want to do most? And I want to win. And I said, wrong answer.
Yeah.
The win, like you just said, that's the vision. That's
Yeah.
the hope at the end. But if you want to, if winning is important to you in whatever way, again, winning is different for all of us. Then you go back and you look at the nuances.
Yeah.
What are the nuances of the behaviors, the thoughts, the feelings, my communication with people, and all those things that you put in place so that your opportunity to win stats have just gone up big time.
Yeah. Maybe you're Steph Curry and all you want to do, I just want to shoot perfect free throw. That's all I want to do.
Right.
Again and again and again. The wins will come if I do that,
Right. Exactly. Practice hard so you can get what you want.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, if you were to look at your to-do list of sort, whatever your to-do list is to you, what are 1 to 3 things that you deem to be critical? They do need a solution, but they're the most challenging to you on a daily basis.
Most challenging to me on a daily basis.
See, for those of you who aren't watching on Zoom, I've got him leaning back in his chair now. This is a good thing.
That's hard because I get a lot thrown at me. So I think
I'm sure you do.
Number one is managing the inner and the outer game of that to-do list. So the outer game meaning all these things being kind of thrown at me, and the inner game being, well, my lizard brain really enjoys doing that thing over there and it's easy for me, so I'm just going to do that, versus this thing over here that is, either challenging or boring, or all the things that come with the negative side of avoiding tasks and procrastination. I think we all face that. So I think thing one on the list is managing the list and the priorities. So thing number two for me in terms of what is challenging in my day-to-day is the communication element of my job. Every time I make a decision, I have to think about, remember, and have a strategy around who needs to know what about what I just did, and who do I need to talk to, and how do I need to gather information to make good decisions. So I think that's sort of 1 and 2 in my world. 1 is managing the list, and 2 is communicating everything that's going on. It sounds like it's not that complicated. It doesn't sound like, oh, he's got to solve, some sort of scientific equation every day.
World problem, huh?
And then, I think thing 3 for any leader is people. How are my people doing? Am I in good enough communication with them? Am I supporting them appropriately? Am I getting what I need from them? Are they accountable to the company? Lots of issues like that.
So 2 of those points were all about communication. So I'm going to go with the first point that you mentioned around communication, which was when you make a decision, getting it out to the team. And I understand it's a spider effect.
Yeah.
It's always who needs to know how much of it do they need to know? What are the consequences if they do or they don't? How quickly do they need to know? All those things. So what currently, if you were to kind of just talk it through a little bit, what currently are some of the factors that you throw into your decision making when you get ready to let the team or someone on the team know what you just did? The coin you flipped and the decision you made.
Well, one thing that's helped the whole situation has been this, moving to video calls and things like that, because it gives you a half step between I need to see this person in person or I'm going to call them. And it's that video call, which just gives a little bit more interaction. And sometimes it's hard to deliver tough news or a tough decision over the phone. And yet you can't create time in your schedule to do it in person, or someone's traveling or things like that. So that's been very helpful. My assistant has started to help me immensely in trying to prioritize who needs to hear what. And when she hears things or sees things in my world that need to be communicated out. I kind of told her, go break things and I'll tell you if you broke anything that was really important. Like
Right.
telling somebody something
We'll
that
sweep it up together later.
yeah, exactly. So she's done great. And so I guess that I would call those sort of the support systems to communication are very helpful. But my process is pretty simple. I'm better verbal and I can get things done much faster verbally. And I take a lot of stuff in writing because that way I can crunch through it quickly instead of having to do all these meetings constantly. So I get a lot of incoming email and outgoing verbal that goes very fast for me. And for me, it's about speed at this point in time. So that's been the best. The factor I do take into account most often on the other side of the communication is what kind of person am I talking to? Are they reflective? Or are they like me, which is, do they shoot from the hip a little bit? So if they're reflective, they're the people I focus on the most to make sure that whatever I'm going to communicate to them, I give to them with time to think and respond, whatever that is, because that builds relationship with those people and it builds trust and it makes them feel less frustrated for someone like me to deal with.
Well, and I love the fact that you bring that into consideration because I've had people tell me before that they shake when I walk down a hallway. And I'm going, well, why? And they say, because I was doing consulting in a company up in Vegas, and they said, because we didn't know whose head was going to roll. And I said, well, if you're doing your damn job, it's not going to be yours. But what they often don't realize is, I've got an extremely soft heart, but I also have a very deep voice and I'm tall, I'm large, and, it just reverberates, and I'm very direct. And as leaders, oftentimes we are, and yet some of the people we speak with or to who are equally as capable and knowledgeable and all those other things, they don't take in information the same way we do. It's tell me it's a bunch of BS, and I'll go, okay, in what way? You tell that to somebody else, and it sits with them for weeks, if not
Yeah.
months.
All they heard was, you are not good enough.
You're
And
bad. Yeah,
the
you're
room
bad. You don't
turned back.
matter.
And
Yeah,
you were just trying to say in short format, let's move on to a different way of doing this.
right. Next. Yeah. So I'm curious then, when you're speaking with how your communication might change, or how do you think about your communication when it comes to clients, customers, or even putting together deals? I don't want to throw too much in the bucket there, but how does your communication change, or does it, when you're speaking with someone externally as opposed to internally?
I think the power dynamic changes a little bit. I think that internally, especially in my role as the leader, and I recognize that I need to protect my time and do those types of things. I do rely on our team to be more accommodating towards my natural style than
Mhm.
having to constantly think about like everybody else's style. I do think about it, and I do kind of think about the big parts of what they need. But there's a little bit more of that sort of power dynamic where it's like, the team is trying to work together, and we got to get the CEO in and out of here so he doesn't.
That's just Chris. That's just the way he is.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
little bit of that, and I'm lucky that they're willing to deal with that and support me in that. On the other side, when it comes to customers, or especially on the side of deals, real estate deals or investment deals or opportunities, it's 100% about what they need, their needs. That should be the focus. And maybe my next evolution of a leader will be focusing on the needs of my team at that same level, and getting good at that. I don't know. But at least for those two constituents, it's about, what is it that this person not necessarily needs to hear, but what is it that they need to either know from the company or experience from the company? What are their actual needs? And then is our company an actual fit for their actual needs? And if so, can we put something together versus can I convince them that we're good for them, even though I know they're not, or something like that?
Right.
Which we don't do. So it's very needs focused, and it's very focused on them.
So last question. When in that type of relationship with a client or potential client or customer, um, do you partner with them in putting together the deal? I mean, I know there's certain deals that there's a structure to it and you have laws you have to abide by and, those type of things. But how much and in what way do you use a partnering type of format and communication for that?
Yeah, so sort of in my world, dependent on check size. So if somebody wants to put in typically $5 to $15 million into a project,
Mm.
they're going to put in all or most of the equity we need to do a project. In which case, if they want to do a partnership format where they have maybe more visibility to decisions or some control over certain things, we sometimes structure that on a one-off basis. But really, the purpose of my business is to be a passive, set it and forget it type investment in real estate. Most of our clients are looking to us to say, "Hey, here's $250,000 or $100,000. Go make it make money." And I don't want to know how to do a development deal or
Yeah.
get entitlements approved by the city or all those
Right.
things that
Please
need
don't make me think about it. Yeah.
Please don't make me think about it. And so that our business model is sort of antithetical to that. We do have, people who want to be real estate entrepreneurs, and that's really what they want to do with their time and their money. And now they have capital from selling their business and they want to go do real estate deals. We typically just encourage them to go do real estate deals without us because it's a mismatch. They should just hire real estate brokers and general contractors and manage it all. And, that way they can get the outcome that they're looking for. But for people looking to invest passively that just want a good partner or co-owner for hire with them, that's the fit.
Very nice. All right. So as we wind this down now, how can listeners either get a hold of you or Caliber or somehow connect in the best way possible? We will put information for those listening will be in the show notes as well. But Chris, let us know how best we can get in touch with Caliber.
Yeah, so a couple different people who would want to. People who want to invest in real estate in a private equity format, we're a great fit. People who have large capital gains from selling their business or a piece of real estate or something that produced a capital gain, we're a big opportunity zone investor. And then people who have real estate related investments, whether it's a great land deal or a development or something they've been working on that they want to execute on and they would like to have a partner like us come in and finance and build together. So all of those things, you can just email us. You can go to the website at caliberco.com or you can email us at invest@caliberco.com and we'll get back to you. We'll match you with the right people within the organization and we'll go from there.
All right. Fantastic. All right. Chris, thank you so much. Thank you for your brilliance, for your openness and sharing, for your sense of humor, and for the experiences and that as well. It always helps to have the stories, some of the stories that go with the experiences so we can all better understand and improve ourselves, that's kind of the name of the game, right?
Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate you.
You bet. So this has been Leaders on the Edge, and I thank you for listening. Make sure you go out and like, share, and subscribe.